Well, hello and welcome to Creator Toolbox. This is the show where we give you, our ServiceNow admins and developers, all the tools you need to be more effective. We show you tips and tricks and bring you the latest news, and that is what we're going to do today. My name is Chuck Tomasi. I am a senior developer advocate at ServiceNow. Been here since 2010, was a customer for a couple of years before that, and have a history that goes back into the time of the dinosaurs or maybe before. So that's my introduction. I'm going to turn it over to this lovely young lady over here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren McManaman. I am the newest member of the ServiceNow Developer Advocacy Team. I've been at ServiceNow, the company, for about 5 years, doing ServiceNow development for about 8. I'm extremely excited to be here and show you all the fun things today about AES, and I'll pass it down below.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I am Earl Duque. I am a developer advocate here at ServiceNow. I've been with the company about a year, and then before that, I was with a bunch of higher ed customers all throughout the University of California. Been with the ecosystem about 5-6 years now, and I'll pass it over to Matthew.
Hey everyone, Matthew Ripley. I'm one of the product managers working on App Engine Studio and the App Engine team. I work on all of our table-centric development products, and I've been here for about 1 year now.
Awesome.
All right. We have some wonderful information for you today about App Engine Studio in the Tokyo release. But before we get into that, a couple of quick announcements. If Lauren points up with her left hand, you will notice that little tower right there. This is part of our Tokyo content. We are currently in Tokyo early availability as we record this in mid-September 2022. I don't know when you're watching this in the future, but thank you very much either way. And thank you for those that have joined us live. We're doing Creator Toolbox on a Tuesday morning, and a number of people from around the world have decided to join in. And that Tokyo icon means this is part of our Tokyo content calendar. We started on August 3rd with a Tech Now episode, and we are rolling out various content we're about halfway through, Earl, I think. And Lauren, it's mid-September, and we'll be going well into October and maybe even a few pieces in November. It's just going to keep going. General availability for Tokyo, however, is in about a week. On the 21st of September. So if you're looking to upgrade any of your pre-prod or prod instances in your organization, you can do that. If you want to get a hold of Tokyo now and learn more, go to devlink.sn/Tokyo, but you can also go to developer.servicenow.com and get a personal developer instance. All right, read that article on PDIs first. We're sort of in a transition time. We're a little short on resources. I'll open and admit that. We just published a blog at devlink.sn/blog. Earl is right on top of all this. He knows where you want to go. So that's all we have on Tokyo. Today's content is based on a podcast that just came out of last week with the gentleman right there, Matthew Ripley. We had a podcast all about App Engine Studio. If you haven't listened to it, go over to devlink.sn/breakpoint or break-point. Both work. One goes to the community, one goes to the dev site. Don't ask. And with all the announcements that I can think of out of the way, I say we turn it over to Lauren because she's going to give us some visuals.
Well, that, Chuck, I certainly can do. So one thing I'm going to do is click very quickly over to my slide deck. Just wanted to confirm with my team that everyone can see that.
Yes.
Awesome. So today I thought it would be kind of fun one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was the best way that you can learn is to teach. And so obviously the Tokyo stuff is very new for our team as well. And considering the fact that Matthew had already spent the time to record the podcast and give us a lot of insight, I thought it'd be kind of fun today to kind of test my knowledge of Tokyo, see what kind of creative feedback that he and his team can add as well, and go through the various features specific to App Engine Studio. So moving forward, I just kind of wanted to give a high-level overview first of all the features that we are kind of focusing on for App Engine Studio, in particular for Tokyo. One of the first things that was very interesting to me was template sharing. So obviously, templates, I believe they came out in the San Diego release of ServiceNow. Correct me if I am wrong about that. It might have been the release prior.
Templates have always been there, but customers have not been able to generate their own templates until San Diego.
That was it. Thank you very much. So obviously, with the conceptualization of App Engine Studio and things like that, governance is a huge focal point. This is essentially the first stab at creating some higher level governance around templates and allowing you to share them to specific groups or individuals within an organization. So essentially, once you create a template, you can choose specific roles or groups of people that have access to them, which is really nice. One of the things that I always loved about working in App Engine Studio is how simplified it makes the app creation experience, and how not only can you use that for like a simpler use from a navigation standpoint, but also, of course, for a security standpoint as well. Next, we've got a flow integration to table builder, which this is very interesting. I don't know if it necessarily there is a defined theme for any particular release, but one thing that I've noticed a lot with the features coming out in Tokyo is that there is a theme of how can we bring new developers or people that maybe in the past didn't specifically call themselves developers into the fold. One of the things that we had seen with early stages of developers' journey is that they build a lot of times what's called table-focused applications. So they start with a table, they work on creating some sort of application that's really based off of the data structure and then grow from that standpoint. So by having, in App Engine Studio, accessibility from the table itself directly to the form and now directly to the flow helps enable that line of thinking. Do I have that kind of correctly, Matthew, of like that was where this kind of comes from?
You've got that exactly correct.
Nice. That's always good to know I'm kind of on the on the pulse of things. Obviously, a huge fave for me are any type of fun updates to Flow Designer. Flow diagramming was something that was added in the San Diego release. So we've added a bunch of functionality to support the view of that diagramming view. That is a new toggle when you're developing your flows, as well as some new actions to the scriptable Flow Runner API. So essentially, that API allows you to trigger flows outside of the standard list of the actual triggers within the box. So if you want to trigger one for a UI action, for example, that was what the scriptable Flow Runner API is for. Next, and this is something I've been tinkering around with quite a bit recently, are email notifications. So prior to this release, if you want to create really good, complex, highly stylized emails, you had to kind of navigate a couple of different artifacts within the ServiceNow platform to do so. So obviously trying to make that a simpler process from the standpoint of developing applications. Now, when you create these email notifications, you have a more simplified way of authoring them through App Engine Studio. The really nice thing that I didn't even know at first, it was only after I was kind of pulling in some of my older notifications I had made, is that this still relies upon the data structures of the previous email notifications. So for example, if you wanted to still see the old ones that you had written in the scope of your application, they are now available there as well, which was a very, very nice thing to see from the state of like management and all the I guess, maintenance of older artifacts and things like that. Next, we have some improvements to Decision Builder. Again, kind of going back to that unofficial, or at least Lauren acknowledged theme of the Tokyo release, is how do we work with people that are just starting the development journey? One thing that we see a lot of times with the business level of developers is that they are making logical and business decisions that really drive the point of the application and just need a slight technical bridge to do so in ServiceNow. So now you have the ability to export and edit things for decision making in Excel. I can think of a specific application I wrote for a customer in the past that was basically an entire matrix of decisions being held. And the main reason they had not migrated to something like ServiceNow was because of all of the very complex flows at the time that were going to be needed to replicate that decision-making process. So now having this view essentially that does this for them, just kind of putting this into a format that is a lot more business friendly, removes that entirely from the list of hurdles to jump when starting a developer journey. And then lastly, and this is less so like a new feature and more just a nice organizational standpoint that ServiceNow is taking, is that whenever in the past you're creating a brand new action to be used in your flow designer, if you want to add steps to that action, they were organized in a much more like a 2-column fashion. We've kind of simplified it into a list fashion that you can easily search through at the top, which again, less so a feature, but more so a helpful hand to remove any hurdles from the development process. Now, those are all the biggest highlights of today. Matthew and team, did I miss anything that you would want to make note of before we kind of jump into our light demo of the day?
Yeah, no, one other exciting one that's coming out in our Tokyo Store 1 release is the Formula Builder. I know that one got a little bit of love in the previous podcast, so I'll just call that one out again here. Pretty exciting. It allows developers who maybe don't know how to use JavaScript, don't know how to use those calculated fields, to use a simple Excel style formula or syntax to write those calculations. So that's the only one I'll call out. That's in there as well with the flows and table builder as another table builder enhancement for Tokyo.
We have
Very
a good
good.
blog breakdown for the formula builder too. So check that out. Check out the episode that we've done too.
Live coding happy hour. Yep.
Mhm.
That was a fun one. Chuck and I had a blast with that one in particular. Awesome. Well, that being said, I think it's time to exit out of my PowerPoint and jump straight into our demo of the day. So give me one moment to pull up my notes here on the side. So one thing that I'm going to pull up and just kind of refresh is my Tokyo version of ServiceNow. Again, I like to highlight that you have accessibility to a Tokyo instance prior to general release by going to the developer website to pick one up, albeit there is a little bit of asterisk at the moment as far as availability, but know that in the future that will be most likely completely gone. So starting off, let's start at the top of our page today. Again, we're looking at App Engine Studio in particular. Let's jump into templates. So obviously from the default, you're going to see any templates that are included in the ServiceNow, just App Engine Studio in general. When I get a lot of questions about the purpose of these pre-included templates, they have kind of two purposes in general. The first is these represent business applications that I would argue most companies have a need for. So if you wanted to create a light application for time off requests, I would assume most companies offer PTO, or at least I hope they do. And this gives you not only a list of what this application includes if you were to use it, but probably more impactfully describe situations that a application, like what is included in a good application. They are a great teaching tool as well. But obviously, if you were creating a multitude of templates, right? If this screen was a much, much more complex, you wouldn't necessarily want to overwhelm somebody with, 200 templates to look for. You'd want it to be hopefully a bit simplified, right, team? So
Yeah. Lauren, can you make your font a little larger?
that I could absolutely do. Is
There
that
we
better?
go. Much better.
Awesome.
Thanks.
It's not a
Right.
live stream without font resizing.
No, it has to have a font resizing. So if I were wanting to limit the effect, the sharing ability of my template, you're going to go ahead and click the ellipses in the upper right-hand corner, and you're going to go ahead and click your share option. So this will allow you to essentially specifically set whether or not this is open to everybody. So if this was like, hey, this is the basic template to teach you how to use the ropes, you can just open that up to everybody. However, if you'd like to limit it, you can do so. One of the best use cases, and I'd like to ask my team about this as well, is that when I worked on the sales team, one interesting use case that we saw for templates was the use at franchises. So obviously, I had been speaking to, I think it was an eyeglass company, which is somewhat of a medical, it was a retailer, but it was a medical retailer. So they have to handle things on a state-to-state basis pretty differently. Most of their store operations were the same, but they would want to tinker and change slight things if it was based at an Ohio store versus like a Texas store. Templates were great for that. But obviously, if you were in the accounting department, you want to see the franchise application template. That wouldn't really make sense. So limiting that for that perspective would actually be pretty helpful. Have you all seen any other interesting use cases for templates recently?
I have not, but that's a
Mine.
great use case. I can see a departmental way of doing that. If you kind of have to think about the forward use of the template, the future use of that template. If it's something that could be used cross-departmentally, you may want to leave it open to all departments. But if it's something that is very bespoke, which to me almost goes against the grain of a template, but it really depends on what you're after. If you make your template too specific, it's a single purpose template, and then it really doesn't have any future use. You might as well just build the whole app and forget about it. So you got to kind of balance what you're building. Am I just doing a simple task approval template, or is it going to be more in depth than that? And then who is your potential future audience? So a lot of thought process going into who is it for, what is it, how could it possibly be used, who may want to use it in the future, and who do we need to make this available to? And you can always change the sharing later.
That's true. You can't always change the sharing later. I know this is the first attempt. Matthew, is there any inside baseball you could give us about maybe where the governance of these templates is going in the future? No pressure, no peer pressure.
I won't go too deep, but I'll just say that yes, we are planning to add additional governance features to templates in the future.
Very exciting.
And I think the combination of kind of, the ability to share these templates and also create your own custom templates is really going to help, those experts in AES, the people who know how to build all the fancy stuff, get the rest of their organization started, build, 80% of what they need for them, and then easily share it out. So we think this is going to be a tool that'll make it really easy to bring App Engine Studio to some of those, lower skilled, lower ServiceNow knowledge users.
I love that. That's very exciting. So moving on from here, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to open up. I've been working on a little travel itinerary application, so we'll use that as our use case of the day. So the second stop that we are going to be making is on one of my tables. So if I go and look into all of my data, so these are all my tables for my travel application, I know for a fact that in my flight table, I think it's my flight table, it has a corresponding flow. So if we go ahead and open up Table Builder, which it's been very interesting to see how Table Builder has changed over the past couple of releases. First it's made to obviously create a much more elegant view of designing tables than the more traditional studio view. Over time, right, the Form Builder was added to this as well with this new slick UIB centric design mechanism. So having that integrated was amazing. Then we got policies and rules, and now if you look at the very top, you will also see that we have flow. So any flow, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, any flow that is triggered by this table will be viewable from this, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They're all record-based flows off of that table in context.
Fantastic. So, and the nice thing too is that you can see whether or not they are even in use. So I can see who made this. I can see whether or not it's active. I can actually say, oh, this is a great idea, copy and start, kind of insert and stay on and create a brand new iteration of that flow as well. So it doesn't even stop there. So if I go ahead and open up this flow, for example, we will see it's a relatively simple flow, but has lots of potential to show what is next as well. How is the one question I have for you, Matthew, is what has been the now that it's been out, effectively for an entire release, which is crazy that we're already so far past San Diego. What has been the overall reception of the diagramming view for Flow Designer? I know that there was a lot of attention drawn to it from the previous workflow editor, allegiance squad of we love this, flow-based view. Has there been a positive reception to diagramming?
There has been a positive reception. I'm candidly not the PM who works on that, so you have to
my apologies.
more information from Brian, but I do know it's been largely positive.
Fantastic. That's what I like to hear. So one thing that I wanted to showcase as, again, the diagramming view for those that are, I know that usually people try to stay N-1, but there's always a little bit of a straggler essentially. So that the diagramming view as effectively allows you to view the traditional ServiceNow flows in design of the diagramming view as well. So that is completely possible. But one thing that we wanted to talk about was what notifications look like within this. So obviously we have our standard flows kind of represent a logical pathway that ServiceNow applications should take. But if we go back into our logic and automation part of our application, we will see that there is an email notification. Now, as I kind of teased before, this was an older notification. I did not build this in App Engine Studio, but what was really nice to see is that when we open this up, it's taking all of those records into account to render this in a much more manageable way. Any people that spend a lot of time creating essentially highly customized emails is that you have to know how to bounce your way around ServiceNow to do so. Not only do you need a notification record, but maybe you're running scripts as well. Maybe you're bringing in the various events that are triggering these emails. So it's a lot of moving parts that is much, much more simplified using something like this. So we can see the name of our email notification. In this circumstance, we can see that it is in fact fired by an event and what specific event is firing that. If we wanted to add new conditions to kind of make it a bi-conditional thing, we could. The specific recipients, and we can see that that is actually a dynamic field. So that's being brought in from the table itself, and you can even add more. And also the template itself that's being used to render that data. I was a bit embarrassed. I had spent so much time bouncing all around the platform when I could have just relied on something that was used in Tokyo itself, which is also a good reminder to definitely look at the documentation. You know, when you spend all the time and effort to upgrade your instance and get everything polished and new, it is always easy to miss some fun new features. And this is one that is definitely worth paying attention to for those building applications.
Lauren, one thing to point out about the notifications, if you want to send a notification in Flow Designer,
Yes.
then your notification record here go up a little bit where it says send. You're currently triggering an event. There's a new option on that says send from Flow. If you don't have it set to triggered via Flow action, it's not selectable in Flow Designer. You can't just randomly say, hey, I want to send this particular notification. It doesn't show up. It's filtered on that option from that field.
That's fantastic. It's also showing that like you don't want to overwhelm people with all this stuff that wouldn't even necessarily work as intended.
So if you were to leave that the way it is and go into Flow Designer and say send notification, if you try to add that action, you'll see you don't have any options. Leave it at event triggered or when event is fired, and go back to your Flow tab.
Yes.
And say action set. It's in ServiceNow Core, so not email.
Oh, notification. My bad.
Notification. Yep. There is a difference.
There is a difference.
And you'll be asked to pick a notification, but there's nothing to pick because you don't have any in this application that are triggered by the flow.
That is very nice to see.
Like,
very,
well,
very cool.
I could send a password reset because that's available to everybody. So it's a nice way to filter that down. If you go back to that notification, you don't have to do this for this particular demo. I don't want to destroy your timing. But say set via flow, trigger from flow action, and then save it. Then it will show up on that list. But I believe you have to refresh Flow Designer because it does, it's caching in an interesting way. I don't believe it'll show up at this point.
Let's go ahead and try. Yes, leave. So if we go ahead and open up our Flow one more time, that's why we're here. We're here to do a demo. I'm trying to do stuff live. That's half the fun.
You suddenly turned into live coding happy hour.
I know. It's hard not to. It's a fun process to test stuff out, especially when it's new.
Yeah, I was a little confused. Like, where's my notification? Oh, I don't have them set to the right trigger. And it makes sense. You're right. You don't want to overwhelm people with a whole bunch of things that they're not going to use or can't use anyway.
Go back to our send notification and we load our list. It might still be a little bit messed up because I didn't refresh the entire page, but
yeah, this is where we ask Matt. Matthew, why did our notification turn on?
Oh, I'm not sure. Try refreshing again.
Yeah.
It's still early availability, ladies and gentlemen. We can hide behind that.
That is the nice get out of jail free card. It's like, oh, it's not out yet. We could still have a couple of oopsies, even if they are user inflicted oopsies.
I can neither confirm nor deny we found a defect.
Yes. So if I go back to our view here, go ahead and add action. We do notification, not email. Send notification. I might have messed up on changing the preferences from it being event triggered. That might have been my problem.
That's all right. We'll continue on, but that's the general idea.
Awesome. Well, moving straight along. The last thing that I was planning on showing today was showing the new actions menu, just how that layout looked. Is there anything before I move on, because that's a bit more pro Cody centric, is there anything that you'd like to kind of showcase here before moving on? I might have missed. I'm asking the teacher to correct the student.
No, I think the only other thing I'll add is, when users are in Table Builder adding flows, that little create flow button, we do narrow down the list of available triggers so that users only select the record-based ones. One extra little piece of guidance just to make it a little bit easier for those low ServiceNow knowledge users to get started. So, right, there's a ton of triggers. These are just the record-based ones.
That is fantastic. And I like too how when you hover it over, it gives an example of what that really means. One thing that I have always liked about App Engine Studio, contrasted against its legacy view, is like its preference for defaulting to informing the user, right? Of like constantly reiterating the teaching process, even having like resources built directly into the platform itself. That's something that I've always found to be like A++.
Yeah, I love that too, but it's not to the point where it's annoying to somebody who's been there 100 times either. It doesn't get in your way.
Correct. And it can be toggled off too. So if you really are like, if it's like Clippy on Microsoft Word, you can be like, oh, okay, I get it, Clippy.
It did not make ServiceNow Clippy.
No, that'd be fun though. That could be a fun idea.
We've got a project on the roadmap to bring it back.
To resuscitate Clippy.
I'm just kidding.
High priority.
Yes. Well, the last thing that we want to show, and this is a little bit ad hoc, so I might need a couple of reminders, especially from Low Coding Happy Hour, was the concept of the calculated formula builder. So remind me, Chuck, can this be done on any field in particular?
My understanding is yes.
It can be done on any field, but it doesn't adhere to the type of the field. So if you don't have a proper value that matches the type field, then it will error out in runtime.
That makes sense. So essentially, like what Matthew said, Formula Builder is kind of not necessarily to replace calculated fields, but to make it a lot simpler of a process. So if you go to any field on Table Builder, you'll always see like that little gear icon on the left-hand side that kind of expands upon what you're seeing here in Table Builder itself. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll pass by a lot of the most common ones used, making things mandatory, adding a default, a dynamic default, adding choices, as if this is a drop down. But one thing that you will now see is Formula Builder. So if I go ahead and click add, I might not have selected an appropriate field for this, because I think I selected
We'll do a string.
String, which is not the...
String is a good demo.
I'm trying to remember which table has just a simple integer that's not being... Let's see. Well, I might not be doing that.
It might not make sense, but
that is true. It might not make the most sense. I'll probably use my pass as a student on building Formula Builder live without much preparation. I apologize.
If you just make a random formula that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I can talk you through it.
Okay, fantastic.
Pick any table. Any
okay,
table.
I'll pick the cost table.
Cost. Oh, that's good. Let's do a math one.
I like that.
Let's see what we have in here. It looks like we've got cost. The third field down. Let's create a formula for that one. Have go perfect. All right, we've got a couple other fields. So maybe let's do a simple sum. You can just type in sum, and it will let you search for the right formula. Perfect. There it is. The syntax guidance at the bottom will tell you what you need to put in there. So let's add a couple of these values together. Maybe we add. Let's assume that lodging would be the price of the lodging. So let's do that one. Perfect. And then if you add a comma, the syntax guidance should guide you to your second value. Oh, don't ignore that syntax error. We're not done yet. We're still working. And let's pick a second one. Flights. Let's add flights and assume that's the cost of the flight. So then hit submit, and you should have a successful formula that adds together those two fields, something that previously required, a lot more coding knowledge, and now you can sort of just do the same thing you do in Excel, and you've got yourself a calculated field.
And since we're talking about App Engine Studio, I want to point out that this is a great example of why App Engine Studio is a good way to introduce people in that are not from a coding background, or even if you're from a coding background, because there's so much usability and nice features in here. So when if you open up the formula builder again, just the fact that it showed what parameters it's expecting inside of the function, the live syntax review, like that. This interface for formula builder is better than the platform interface.
Oh, way better. Yeah.
Yeah.
The platform is just a text box.
Yeah, and it has some live stuff that happens, but not nearly to this situation. And that the reason behind this is because of the way that App Engine Studio is built, and in the new in the next experience, and with the components and the different ways to create things for these experiences. The fact that it's so much more of a newer web interface, and you could build basically whatever, or our engineering teams could build whatever that they can imagine, kind of thing. It makes it so much more open to these kind of better experiences for us doing table building or doing app development and stuff like that. And so it's a small thing to notice, but it's huge for the sake of usability for us that do these things every day. It's just much better interfaces, and that this is a good example of why.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, even just having something as simple as this say, hey, when we say time diff, this is exactly what that means. Here's the expected inputs. Here's the expected outputs. Here's an example of what it looks like. Usually stuff that you'd have to pull up documentation to double check. It's built directly in. That's a huge new way of ServiceNow's platform being constructed.
And just a couple quick comments, because I'm looking at what you're typing on the screen. It looks like your instinct was go with the plus. Keep in mind, everyone, this is the first version coming out of Formula Builder. So this will be followed up very quickly by a version 2. We'll support things like that plus sign. Right now, the little operators, plus, minus, those aren't supported yet. We're just doing the functions, so some. But an easy way to get around that is just to nest your formulas. So Lauren, if you wanted to create a more complex formula that sum together 3 inputs, just put your cursor in front of sum and type in sum again.
Yep. Chuck and I ran into that a couple of times when we were doing live coding happy hour.
There we go. And now you've got a more complex formula that nests some of those functions. So cool. Lots more to come out in the next release, which I'll be very excited to talk about when we're ready. Yeah.
It's a little unfair of us to be like, tell us more when Tokyo's not even out yet. But yeah, we always got to try. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So I'm going to switch back to my PowerPoint to kind of call out a couple of new fun stuff where you can learn a bit more. Keep on. There we go. So one thing I would definitely want to highlight was the Breakpoint podcast. So whether you are a podcast listener, so that we're using Spotify or iTunes or any of the podcast providers to get the audio version, or if you love our YouTube channel and would like to kind of listen on the YouTube platform instead, Matt and Chuck did a phenomenal Breakpoint podcast that came out, I believe was it last week or 2 weeks ago, Chuck?
Last week, the 7th.
Last week, and it's phenomenal. So they go a lot deeper into the pieces, and it's a great listen. I would highly recommend that. And on top of that, obviously we're talking about AES today. I'm not going to miss an opportunity to talk about the Build with AES challenge. So I bet a lot of you listening have already submitted, because we have gotten an obscene amount of submissions already, which is great to see. We are hosting a Build with AES challenge. So if it's your first time hearing about it, great. You've got about a week left to just showcase for us something that you've built on AES. That can be an application, that could be a complex web of flows, etc. Make a short video or text post on the community post. We'll link it down below, or maybe we'll link it on the screen. I don't have the video pulled up here at the moment, so maybe Earl can pop that up for me. And if you do that before September 19th at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you'll win a free shirt. It's always fun to get a free shirt. It's a very similar design to the one that many people missed getting at CreatorCon. So it's a way to kind of get one of the newest ServiceNow shirts. So we hope you participate in that. It's really fun. I've been loving seeing the entries, and maybe as a little bit of a spoiler for upcoming live coding happy hour, we might be digging into some of our favorites. So you might even get to be featured there, perhaps. I don't know. No spoilers. Anything else from my team at the moment?
No, good stuff. I feel like I just feel like we might have missed something, but I can't put my finger on it.
Did we?
You got the formula builder, you got the flows, you got the...
We did the templates.
We had
did
templates?
Okay. So this is where we ask Matthew any insights on the future.
Any insights on the future? Well, coming up in the Tokyo Store 2 release, we'll have an exciting new tool that it will allow a user to create a table by uploading a PDF. Now, we know a lot of our government customers have existing PDF intake processes. So if they take those PDFs, upload them into our PDF extractor, they'll be able to click through and create fields from all of those fields on their PDF in AES. Yes, instead of typing them in manually, replacing every keystroke with a click. So we like that one. That's coming up, and also check out the new workspace builder when that comes out. We know users have been asking for an easy way to create workspaces for a long time, and that one when that comes out will be, I think, a big game changer for App Engine Studio, and will make it a lot easier for those low coders, low ServiceNow knowledge users to spin up workspaces fast.
I have to ask, just my inner curiosity is killing me on that PDF generator thing. What technologies are we using behind the scenes? I assume document intelligence is in there somewhere?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Are we using import sets or the robust transform stuff? What anything else that's
there's
behind the scenes?
There's an OCR tool in the back end that's doing some of that work. Doc Intelligence is doing some of that work. And those are some of the main tools that we're using.
All right.
That's so exciting.
I always get a kick out of it when we build something and then we use it again for something. I'm like, yes, we're actually like building layers on this cake.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Lauren.
Thank you. It's my first time driving on Creator Toolbox, so I appreciate the opportunity. And thank y'all so much, Matt, for coming as well. Like, your insight is so valuable. I'm so excited to see where this is going. As a legacy user of ServiceNow, which is so like weird to see myself as, to see it like prior to Studio and see where it is now. It gives me like so much encouragement for like the next wave of developers where this like company is taking this product. It's a real awesome thing to see.
And I got to admit, as someone who's working on it, I'm very excited for these next couple of releases. We'll have a lot more exciting stuff to show.
Awesome.
So it's your first episode of Creator Toolbox, but not your last.
Looking forward to coming back.
Tokyo. So in the spring we'll have Utah. Mm-hmm. In the fall of 23, I shouldn't use the seasons. I know there's a global audience. Q1 will be Utah. Q3 will be Vancouver. Then it goes to Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Then Xanadu. Mm-hmm. Was it Yokohama for Y?
Is it? I don't know. I don't know.
And then Z is for Zurich, and we don't know what happens after that. It'll be like the spring of 2026 when we have to worry about that.
It's not that far away, though. That's a spooky thing. It's not that far away.
Well, I know. When you think about, Kingston wasn't that long ago. You go, that was like 4 years ago.
Man, yeah, put in the comments down below what you want our next alphabetic system to be. I think at my old company, we used Game of Thrones characters because there's so many of them. There's one for every letter. And if we failed the sprint, we switched the photo for the sprint to that character deceased, so that we could easily visually tell which sprints we succeeded at.
Anybody who's ever come up with a theme knows there's always a challenge, whether you're naming servers or we used to have a different scheme at our old company for naming our servers, and then somebody said it's just not sustainable, so we went to this real generic like corp-db-001. It's like, that's not very imaginative, but it's easy to figure out what it is. It's a database server. Anyway, we've gone down a rabbit hole.
We got some comments about Xanadu. All I can think of is it just gives me an excuse to wear roller skates at Knowledge. So
yeah. It's a Q3 release, so we're not going to be at Knowledge right after Xanadu. It's like
meetups then, developer meetups.
Roller skate to your meetups. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us live. Thank you for watching this later. We appreciate your comments. We do keep an eye on those. And we will see you again real soon for another Creator Toolbox, live coding happy hour, or Breakpoint. You can find all of that again. The information for all of our Tokyo release, devlink.sn/Tokyo. And on that final plug, I play the music and we wave, smile, and say goodbye. Thanks, everybody.